He struck her in open court and thought no one would dare to stop him. Deputy Craig Rawlins, a decorated officer with a dark record, believed his uniform gave him the right to intimidate, to silence. But he made one mistake. He chose the wrong target. Her name was Valerie Monroe, a quiet woman in the back row, there to support her younger brother, Marcus, who stood accused of a crime he didn't commit. But when they picked Valerie, they didn't know who they were messing with. They didn't know she was a Navy SEAL, trained in truth, discipline, and justice. What came next wasn't just justice, it was exposure. One courtroom incident sparked an unstoppable chain of revelations, and a system used to burying the truth was suddenly wide open. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from and make sure to subscribe, because the story you're about to hear isn't just about one man, it's about all of us. Sunlight filtered through the courtroom blinds, casting long shadows across the silent benches. No one spoke, but everyone felt it, the moment before everything changed. Courtrooms have their own kind of silence. It's not peaceful, it's tense, heavy, like the walls themselves are listening. On a cold Tuesday morning, that silence was broken. Not by a gavel, not by a lawyer's voice, but by something far more human. Valerie Monroe sat in the third row, still as a statue. She wore a gray blazer, no insignia, no military pins, just a small courthouse badge and a quiet presence that somehow commanded attention. Her eyes didn't roam. They stayed fixed on the young man in front, her brother, Marcus. Marcus looked barely 20, thin, jittery, the sleeves of his borrowed suit too long for his arms. Every so often, he turned around to look at her, uncertain, scared, and every time, Valerie gave him a nod, just a small one, the kind that said, "You're not alone." The officer seated beside the prosecutor was a different story. Broad-shouldered, smirking beneath a too-polished badge, Deputy Craig Rawlins had a presence you could feel across the room. He leaned back, arms folded, chuckling softly after a whispered comment. Valerie noticed. Of course she did. You don't serve 2 tours and train in threat detection without learning to read a room like a map. The judge called the case. Marcus stood, chains on his wrists. A hush fell over the crowd. And then it happened. As Valerie stepped down from the witness box, having calmly stated her Navy credentials, her alibi for Marcus, and evidence of his innocence, Rawlins rose. She passed near him, and without warning, his elbow shot out, sharp and deliberate. It hit her just under the ribs. The gasp from the gallery was instant. The bailiff shouted. The judge slammed the gavel, but Valerie, she didn't flinch. She turned, slow and sure, locking eyes with Rawlins like a sniper lining up a target. "Permission to speak freely, Your Honor." Why would a decorated servicewoman be assaulted, in a court of law of all places, and stay calm? Would you? Sometimes the strongest moment isn't when we strike back. It's when we don't need to, because everyone sees exactly what just happened. And in that moment, they did. The courtroom regained order, but the room itself had changed. People didn't whisper anymore. They watched, some with confusion, others with disbelief. And Valerie? She stood straight, hands calmly folded in front of her. Her face didn't twist in anger, didn't even twitch. She had been trained not just to fight, but to choose when. "Deputy Rawlins," the judge barked, "you will be removed from this courtroom until further notice." The bailiff stepped forward. Rawlins opened his mouth in protest, but Valerie had already turned away. She wasn't here to win an argument. She was here to save her brother. Outside the courtroom, Marcus sat on a bench, his wrists free now, but his shoulders still slumped like they carried weight no one could see. Valerie sat next to him, not speaking at first. Her calm wasn't for show. It was armor, polished over years, burnished by fire. "They want me to take a plea," Marcus muttered. "4 years, just to make it go away?" Valerie didn't raise her voice. "Did you do it?" He looked at her, almost offended. Of course not. Then don't ever say make it go away again. There was a silence between them, not heavy this time, but searching. He looked down. I don't want to die in there, Val. Her heart clenched, but she didn't show it. Instead, she crouched in front of him, her tone as steady as ever. You think taking a felony helps you survive? That mark follows you longer than prison. Jobs, school, housing. They don't see your name, they see a record. This doesn't end when you sign that paper. That's when it begins. Can you imagine having to convince someone you love not to surrender to a system they believe won't protect them? Marcus blinked away tears. What if it's already decided? Valerie stood up. Her spine straightened the way it did under orders, but her eyes burned with something deeper. Then we undecide it. Because sometimes calm isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the clearest sign of power. That night, Valerie didn't sleep. She paced the small apartment like she was back on watch duty overseas. Alert, focused, unshaken. Marcus sat nearby, half watching the news, half lost in thought. The elbow in court had only been the start. Valerie's phone buzzed. No caller ID. A raspy voice on the other end said, "This isn't over." Then silence. She didn't flinch. She opened her old military locker, the one she swore she'd never touch again, and pulled out a worn notebook, a burner phone, and a name. Xavier Bell. He'd vanished 2 months earlier, after a minor arrest, also by Deputy Rollins. That night, she made a call to someone who hadn't owed her anything in years, but respected her enough to pick up on the first ring. "Noah Pierce," he said, "Internal Affairs." "Noah, we need to talk." The next morning, they met behind a forgotten warehouse on the east side. Noah looked tired, but alert. He didn't speak until she handed him the notebook. "Corton's on the list," she said, "but he's not the whole tree." Noah nodded, slipping the pages into his coat. "They've scrubbed footage before, tampered reports. Anyone who speaks out disappears." Valerie's jaw tightened. "Then we make it impossible to silence." She wasn't bluffing. She had access. Restricted networks, buried files, contacts from her service days. Within hours, she'd found the body cam logs, hidden footage, mismatched timestamps. Evidence of misconduct didn't just exist, it reeked of cover-up. Have you ever discovered something so wrong, so deliberate, that it changed your understanding of trust? She loaded it all onto a hard drive. Marcus watched her in silence, as if seeing his sister for the first time, not just as family, but as force. "They're going to come after you," he said. "I know," she replied. "Let them." Sometimes justice doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it breaks down the door. And Valerie Monroe had just unlocked it. By midnight, the apartment was quiet, except for the hum of Marcus's old laptop. Valerie sat beside it, shoulders squared, eyes locked on the screen. She hadn't blinked in what felt like hours. Every file she uncovered was another stone overturned. Officers shielding Rollins, memos lost, complaints dismissed without interviews. She had the footage. She had the name. What she needed now was a voice loud enough to break the silence. That voice was Lana Gray, a relentless independent journalist known for lighting matches in rooms full of gasoline. Valerie hadn't seen her since the base in Fallujah, where Lana had once embedded with her unit. Their bond was forged not in friendship, but in fire. "Say less," Lana replied when Valerie called. "Send me everything." Within 12 hours, Valerie stood in the back of a borrowed newsroom at a community center. Wires dangled from ceiling tiles. Coffee cups trembled on old tables as Lana's team scrambled, fact-checking, syncing video, uploading to encrypted servers. "This is solid," Lana said, scanning the footage. "Rollins, clear as day. Your testimony lines up, body cam data backs it up, and those internal memos? Damning." "Run it all," Valerie said. "No redactions, no filters." Lana raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Valerie didn't blink. "Let them see what we've seen. Let them feel it. At 7:03 the next morning, the video dropped. By 7:10, it had spread across every social feed in the state. The headline burned like wildfire. Decorated veteran assaulted in court by officer under investigation. Truth uncovered. Phones rang. Press conferences were canceled, rescheduled, reworded. The mayor called for a full review. Rollins was placed on leave, quietly. But the people? They weren't quiet anymore. Have you ever seen truth move faster than fear? Marcus stared at the screen, disbelief written on his face. You really did it. Valerie rested a hand on his shoulder. Not yet, she said softly. Because telling the truth is one thing. Making them listen, that's a battle of its own. The courtroom was standing room only. No cameras were allowed, but everyone inside had already seen the video. The elbow, the silence, the steel in Valerie Monroe's voice. And now they came to witness what justice might look like if it ever showed up on time. Valerie sat to the left of the defense table, posture straight, eyes forward. Marcus was beside her in a clean shirt, no cuffs this time. His hands trembled slightly, folded on the table like a prayer. Judge Rosenberg entered without fanfare, his robe flowing like quiet thunder. The gallery hushed. He flipped through a file slowly, then looked up. In light of newly submitted evidence, the prosecutor said, voice low, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Marcus Monroe. There was a pause. The kind that seems to bend time itself. Judge Rosenberg nodded. Case dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Monroe, you are free to go. The room exhaled in one collective breath, like someone had cracked open a window in a stifling attic. Murmurs turned into applause. Marcus didn't move at first. Then his chest heaved, shoulders sinking like chains had just fallen off his body. Valerie placed her hand gently on his back. No words, just presence. Can you imagine what it feels like to walk out of a courthouse not because you escaped, but because the truth finally caught up? They stepped into the light outside. Reporters swarmed, but this time they didn't shout. They simply watched. Valerie stopped just once, looked directly into a camera. You saw the truth. Now let's make sure it doesn't stay rare. Someone asked if she felt vindicated. She looked at Marcus. Happening. Not until this stops happening to families without footage, without someone in uniform to speak for them. And just like that, she turned and walked on. Because justice, when real, doesn't end in a courtroom. It begins there. The apartment was still for the first time in weeks. No police scanners buzzing in the corner, no flicker of breaking news on the TV. Just the soft tick of the kitchen clock and the scent of real food, cooked by someone else, for once. Marcus sat at the table, hoodie loose on his shoulders, eyes clearer now. He chewed slowly, like his body was relearning what peace tasted like. Across from him, Valerie sipped from a chipped mug, her gaze on the window where the city glowed in quiet shadows. You sure you're okay? He asked. She looked at him, and for the first time since the day it all began, she smiled. Not a grin, not pride, just a moment of release. I'm okay, she said. You? Marcus nodded. I thought I was going to lose everything. You almost did, she replied softly, but you didn't let them take it. There was a long pause, not uncomfortable, just full. He looked at her. Why didn't you let it go? Why not just walk away? Valerie leaned back, her voice low and even. Because when someone kicks you in the one place where justice is supposed to live, you don't walk away. You stand up, you hold the line, and you finish it. Outside, the streets were quiet, but the city was not asleep. The ripples of her actions had already begun. Resignations, investigations, new policies. But that wasn't what stayed with Valerie most. She thought of all the names, men and women who never made it this far. People who didn't have cameras or courtrooms or sisters in uniform. She carried them still. But now, she also carried something else. Hope. Tell me, When was the last time you saw someone stand up not just for themselves, but for everyone who couldn't? That's the kind of strength that leaves a mark on the world. And some marks don't fade. In the story of Valerie Monroe, we learn a quiet but powerful truth. Sometimes, the strongest stand is not made with fists, but with patience, presence, and persistence. Valerie didn't raise her voice. She didn't lash out. Instead, she stood her ground with grace, defended her brother with courage, and brought the truth into the light. Her strength came not from anger, but from clarity. There are moments in life when we are called to stand up for ourselves, for someone we love, or for what's right. And often, those moments don't come with warning. They arrive quietly, like a knock at the door in the middle of an ordinary day. But how we answer, calmly, bravely, and with our whole heart, can change everything. At any age, we carry a lifetime of wisdom. Valerie's story reminds us that no voice is ever too quiet, no moment too late. Even when the world seems heavy, the truth, once spoken, can still rise. So ask yourself gently, if not now, when? If not you, who? Because sometimes all it takes is one steady soul to light the way for many. In the quiet of an early morning, Valerie sat on her balcony with a warm drink in hand. The city hadn't changed overnight, but something inside her had. Not every victory makes the news. Some arrive in silence, with no applause, only the steady beat of your own heart reminding you made it through. That kind of strength doesn't need witnesses, it just needs truth. What followed wasn't easy. Healing never is. But piece by piece, Valerie and Marcus began to rebuild. Trust, time, a life without fear. Investigations widened, policies shifted, and somewhere in that slow turning of the tide, they found something close to peace. Not because the world was fixed, but because they helped make it face itself. If this story stayed with you, share it. Subscribe to Echoes of Racism so these voices don't fade into silence. In the meantime, I've chosen 2 stories I think will move you just as much. Take care, and we'll see you soon.